August sun beat down mercilessly on Phoenix, Arizona. 10-year-old Ethan squinted, his grip tightening on the handlebars of his trusty Schwinn. It wasn't even noon yet, and the asphalt shimmered like a mirage. He sighed, wishing he hadn't spent his entire allowance on candy at the corner store. Now the 3-mile trek back home felt twice as long. As he rounded a particularly dusty bend, a weathered hand grasped his shoulder. Ethan yelped, nearly tipping over. He turned to see a tall, gaunt figure clad in a threadbare brown coat. Despite the scorching heat, the man wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. "Easy there, son," the man rasped, his voice dry like desert wind. "You look like you could use a rest." Ethan eyed the stranger warily. Strangers in Phoenix were usually after one thing, a handout. He shook his head, ready to offer a polite refusal. "Hold on," the man said, his voice softer now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, ordinary-looking wristwatch, gray plastic with a worn leather strap. "This is for you, birthday present." Ethan's birthday was still 2 weeks away. He hesitated, but the man held out the watch insistently. It wasn't like the fancy digital watches his friends bragged about, but something about it felt important. "Go on, take it," the man urged. Ethan's hand brushed against the cool plastic. The watch felt heavier than it should. He glanced up, but the man was already turning away, his figure receding into the shimmering heat haze. Ethan stared at the watch on his wrist. The digital display was bright, the numbers clear and stark. 999 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes. It started counting down the moment he strapped it on. He sprinted home, fear prickling his skin like 1,000 needles. He burst through the front door, panting, and shoved the watch under his mom's nose. "Mom, look at this. This creepy guy gave it to me, and it's counting down." His mother's smile faltered. She took the watch and examined it closely, her expression unreadable. Finally, she placed it on the kitchen table. "Don't worry, honey, it's just a broken toy. We'll throw it away." But the watch wouldn't be thrown away. No matter how many times his parents tried, it reappeared in Ethan's pocket, on his bedside table, tucked under his pillow. The countdown continued, relentless, a constant reminder hanging over his head. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Ethan became obsessed with the countdown. He started doing reckless things, climbing the tallest tree in the neighborhood, swimming across the canal despite the ever-present danger of currents. Every moment felt precious, fleeting. He lived life on the edge, savoring every experience as if it might be his last. At first, his parents were worried. They grounded him, tried to reason with him, but Ethan couldn't explain the watch, the chilling certainty that gnawed at him. As the days dwindled, their worry morphed into a different kind of fear, a quiet desperation mirrored in their tear-filled eyes. The day the watch hit 100 days left, Ethan knew he had to make the most of it. He confessed his feelings to Sarah, the girl with bright eyes and laugh lines that crinkled at the corners. He told her about the watch, about his impending deadline. He expected her to scoff, call him crazy, but she surprised him. She believed him. They spent the next 100 days in a whirlwind of stolen moments, adventures big and small. They chased sunsets on mountaintops, shared first kisses under starry skies, and swam in hidden waterfalls. It was a borrowed future, crammed into a finite time frame. As the clock dipped below 10 days, a strange calm settled over Ethan. He'd done everything he could. He'd lived. He'd loved. He'd faced his fear head-on. The final day arrived, a crisp November morning, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and burning wood. Ethan stood on his porch, the watch on his wrist displaying a meager 23 hours, 59 minutes. Around him, the world seemed to hold its breath. He said goodbye to his tearful parents, the warmth of their embrace a stark contrast to the chilling emptiness inside him. He found Sarah sitting on the curb by their usual hangout, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. They held each other tightly, unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. The last hour ticked by with agonizing slowness. The final minute stretched into an eternity. As the last minute stretched into an eternity. As the final second ticked by, Ethan braced himself. But nothing happened. No blinding light, No deafening silence, no rush of wind ushering him into the great beyond. He opened his eyes, blinking against the blinding morning sun. The watch on his wrist beeped once, a flat electronic sound, and then went dark. Disbelief warred with a flicker of hope. Could it be? Was he free? He looked at Sarah, expecting to see joy mirrored in her eyes. But her expression was a mask of confusion, laced with a hint of something darker. "It didn't happen," she whispered, her voice hollow. "You're still here." A knot formed in Ethan's stomach. He'd lived his life on borrowed time, savoring every moment as his last. Now the borrowed time seemed to have vanished, leaving a gaping emptiness in its wake. The adventures, the stolen kisses, the frantic pace of their relationship. It all felt surreal, seen through the lens of a borrowed life. He spent the next few days in a daze. The world around him seemed muted, the vibrancy he'd once relished dulled. Sarah tried to pull him back, but a wall had risen between them. The weight of the unknown future pressed down on him heavier than the certainty of his perceived doom ever had. He revisited the place where he'd met the stranger, searching for answers. The desert sun beat down mercilessly, the once familiar path stretching before him like a taunt. He found no trace of the man, only the oppressive heat and an unsettling sense of being watched. Days bled into weeks, then months. Ethan drifted through life, a ghost haunting his own memories. The watch remained silent, a constant reminder of the life he'd almost lived. He distanced himself from Sarah, unable to reconcile the intensity of their borrowed time with the mundane reality of the present. One night, a dream ripped through his sleep. The heat shimmered, distorting the figure of the stranger. But this time, Ethan could see the man's face, etched with a cruel smile. "You thought you were free, boy?" the stranger rasped in his dream. "The watch was just a test to see if you could truly live, knowing your time was limited." Ethan woke with a gasp, sweat clinging to his skin. The dream felt real, terrifyingly so. He tried to rationalize it, but a seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, news reports blared of a peculiar phenomenon. People across the globe were experiencing shared dreams, vivid and unsettling, featuring a gaunt man in a wide-brimmed hat. The reports mirrored Ethan's dream, word for word. Panic gripped him. He wasn't alone. This was bigger than him, bigger than the watch. The stranger was playing a twisted game, and the stakes were far more horrifying than a ticking countdown. Ethan knew he couldn't stay idle. He sought out experts, anyone who could shed light on the dreams, the stranger, the watch. His search led him to a reclusive scholar who lived on the outskirts of Phoenix, a man rumored to possess knowledge of the arcane. The scholar listened intently to Ethan's story, his eyes gleaming with a strange light. When Ethan finished, the man spoke in a low voice, his words sending shivers down Ethan's spine. "The watch wasn't a timer, Ethan," he said. "It was a key that unlocked a door. Now something has come through,